This lesson is going to practice finding volumes with the two types of prisms that we've looked at so far, the triangular prism and the rectangular prism. So just a reminder is to determine the difference between the two, remember that a triangular prism has triangular bases. So I'm going to say in order to distinguish between the two, for the triangular prism, look for the triangular bases. For the rectangular prism, on the other hand, think about that like a box. And I'm going to say that all bases will be rectangles. And it's important that you're able to differentiate between these two because the formula that you're going to use is going to be different for each. Remember that for the triangular prism, you're going to use the formula volume is equal to area of the triangular base times the height. Or in other words, V equals capital B, which represents the area of that triangular base, times the height. And for our friend the rectangular prism, we can use that easier formula, volume is equal to length times width times height. But again, it's important that if you're using the triangular prism, you use the formula volume is equal to area of the base times the height. And for the rectangular prism, volume equals length times width times height. It's kind of like trying to play golf with a football. It won't work very well if you try to use the wrong formula for the wrong prism. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at how this might look. The first example that I'm going to start with, and you're going to go ahead and draw this on your paper too. I'm going to start with a figure that looks like this. And the dimensions of this fella, I'm going to say that piece there is 12 inches, this piece down here 5 inches, and lastly 10 inches. Now, here's a nice example of a triangular prism. Why? Because when I look at the picture here, I see these triangles. If it were a rectangular prism, then all of the faces would be rectangles. But these are triangles, so I'm going to use this first approach up here at the top. The volume is equal to the area of the base times the height. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find the area of that triangular base. So find the triangle area. Remember that the formula for the area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. And this triangular base that I'm looking at has those dimensions. So when I go to substitute into the formula now, I've got 1/2 times 12 times 5, or in other words, 30. All right, now this is review, so I went through that kind of quickly. If I'm going too quickly for you, remember that you can always go ahead and either pause the video, you can go ahead and stop the video and rewind it if you missed something important that I said. So you have a lot of options as you're doing your notes and watching these videos. The next thing that I need to do is I need to find the height of the prism. And remember that h is going to be the distance between the two triangles. So if I go back and look at my picture, I've got this yellow triangle in front, yellow triangle in back, The piece that connects them, or the distance between the two, is that 10 inches. And now I can go ahead and I can substitute into my formula. So volume is equal to area of the base, which is represented by an uppercase B, times the height. Well, we found that our area of the base was 30. We found that our height was 10. And when we use our calculator to multiply those two, we find that the volume of this rectangular prism is either 300 inches cubed or 300 cubic inches. Excellent. All right, I'm going to label this next one example 2. You should also on your paper. And I drew that a little bit smaller than I would have liked to. Remember, when you're drawing these, it might be helpful to draw them larger because it'll make it easier to label your dimensions. So I'm going to say this is 2 feet here, 5 feet. So my picture's not the greatest picture, but you don't have to be a terrific artist in order to do these. That's the nice thing about them. So if I look at this one is different from the first one in that there aren't any triangles for bases. So this is my box scenario, or my rectangular prism scenario. I'm always happy to see this situation because I think this is much easier than the triangular prism due to the fact that I can just use the formula volume equals length times width times height. So 2 times 5 times 4. When I get my calculator out and I find the product of those three numbers, I find that it's 40. So I can either say 40 feet to the third power, or I can say 40 cubic feet. Those are really just two different ways of saying the exact same thing. Beautiful. All right, I'm moving onwards here. Example 3. So I'm going to make this one 5.2 inches. I'm going to make this piece down here 4 inches. And this piece over on the left side, I'm going to make 7 inches. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and I'm going to look to see if I have any of those triangular bases. And it looks like I accidentally erased some important information here. Let me go back and relabel that. There we go. So notice that the front of my figure and the back of my figure are those nice triangles. That makes this a triangular prism. Because it's a triangular prism, I can't go use the nice easy formula that I used the last time. I have to use the first formula, that volume is equal to area of the base times the height. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the area of the triangular base. And none of these steps are very hard. I mean, you've been finding areas of triangles since middle or maybe even elementary school. But now we're putting them all in, putting lots of steps involved in one problem. So area equals 1/2 times base times height. If it's helpful, draw the triangle that you're trying to find the area for. This guy has a height of 5.2 inches and a base of 4 inches. So 1/2 times 4 times 5.2 When I put that into my calculator, I find that the area of that triangle is 10.4. So step 1 is done. Step 2 is to find the height of the prism. And remember, height is going to be the distance between the triangles. So if I go back and look at my picture, I've got this yellow triangle at the front, yellow triangle at the back. This piece that connects those yellow triangles is going to be the distance between the two, or the height of my prism, which in this case is 7 inches. And now the last thing that I want to do is substitute into that formula. So the formula says to multiply capital B, the area of the triangular base, times h, the height of the prism. Or in other words, in this particular case, 10.4 times 7. So when I go ahead and get my calculator out and multiply the 10.4 times the 7, I end up with 72.8. And that's either inches to the third power or 72.8 inches cubed, or cubic inches. Either one of those is a really good way to express your answer. All right, thanks for hanging in there with me this long, folks. We've got one more and we're going to push through to the end here. This one I'm going to call example 4. So this one has dimensions 3 feet by 2 feet by 5 feet. And the very first thing that I'm going to look for here are those triangular bases. In this example, there are none of those triangular bases. All of our faces here in this example are those nice rectangles. That tells me that I can use the nice easy formula, which makes me happy. So volume equals length times width times height, or 3 times 2 times 5, making the volume of this prism 30 cubic feet, or 30 feet raised to the third power. Beautiful. Great job, folks. So you have got some practice problems to do on Castle Learning that go along with this assignment as well. The name of this Castle assignment is going to be Mixed Practice. And you can always come back and rewatch the video if you stumble into trouble or need help. I do believe that on Castle Learning they'll give you hints. And if that fails, you're always welcome to email me or Miss Andre, or turn into our office hours Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the geometry class notebook on Teams. All right, thanks for being so good and bearing with me. Appreciate it. Wish we could be there to meet in person, but until we can again, we're going to do the next best thing. Take care, stay healthy, folks.